Welcome back, Red Eyes members. It's great to have you along. We are having a very interesting conversation with author Anthony Peake. We're talking about, well, pretty much the theory of everything, the theory of reality, as it were. We're talking about quantum science, the weirdness of the act of observance or even awareness or consciousness in this kind of matrix that we're all involved in and experiencing. We're talking about precognition, temporal lobe epilepsy. And I want to begin now here, just ask you a little bit, Anthony, about your, I guess, your personal outlook on this as well in regards to what you consider reality to be. Do you feel today that this is something that you want to, well, if we look at it from the perspective of the Matrix again, and the Matrix movies even then, in that narrative, people want to escape from that because it's actually an illusion. It's not the real reality. What's your idea of that? Do you feel that we need to move away from this and we can escape it, or are you looking forward to the day that we can kind of harness this more and actually learn to enjoy it, like living in a paradise, if you know what I mean?
Yeah, exactly. And that, my feeling is that this whole theory that I have, and it is, as I keep stressing, it is a theory, and that's why I want people involved to put the contributions in one way or another, is that it seems to be, if anybody's seen the movie Groundhog Day, and in Groundhog Day, the central character, Connors, lives the same day over and over again. And he realizes he's living the same day over and over again. And he uses it to his own advantage. So what he does is he tries to bed the girl, he tries to make money and everything else. But what happens is at the end of every day, he then is reborn again, living the same day again. After many, many relivings of this, he decides that he wants to do good for doing good's sake. And he realizes he can manipulate the reality around him to do good. Now, I think in many ways, probably my theory implies that if we do live our lives over and over again in this matrix-like illusion, and at the end of every life we go back to our birth and we live it again, but we can change it and we can do anything. Isn't it wonderful that somebody would be turning around to you guys out there and I'll say, you know that girl that you really fancied at school that you never picked up your courage to say hi to? Next time round, your daemon will tell you or warn you or give you an hint to go and speak to her. How about the time that you should have gone along and studied for that exam, but you didn't? Your daemon is there to tell you, hey guy, this time round, study for it. How about the time when you had the opportunity to go to travel to Australia? You turned it down. This time round, you could go and do it and see what happened. The universe is your oyster. You can do whatever you want to do. And you can do it again and again and again. And that's the wonder of Cheating the Ferryman, because it's not like the Matrix. You're not trapped in this awful world that's manipulated by other beings. It's a world manipulated by you. For instance, these days, there's this massive interest in these ideas of manipulating your reality to get things you want. You know, right, particularly in America, there's a big theme of, sort of ask and you will get. Now, I don't necessarily agree with that very much in the case of my theory, because effectively, if this is your reality and you can manipulate it, you can attract good things to you, or you can attract bad things to you, depending upon your mood. I was in Switzerland a few months ago. Well, no, it was about 18 months ago. I was invited to talk for the Scientific and Medical Network in Switzerland, in Geneva. And I did a talk at this beautiful place called Kretbarand in the mountains above Geneva. And on the way back, I was being driven back by an English guy that lives out there. And I asked him why was he involved in the kind of things he was involved in, because he was an engineer. And he said, because a very peculiar thing happened to me a few years ago. He said that I felt very, very confident and happy in myself because I felt I was in control of my life. And he said, one day I noticed something very strange. I hadn't seen a red traffic light for months. And he said, I drove to work every day and the lights were always green. And then he said, as soon as he realized this, he started to worry about it and the lights started to turn red again.
There you go. Huh.
And I said, that's you manipulating your reality. Isn't it the same? Don't you feel it? Sometimes you feel really good about things. Everything works. But if you feel the least bit down, it becomes infectious. You infect your environment around you.
Yeah.
And that's because it is your reality and you're manipulating it. The power is learning how to control it. And I'm hoping my third book, I'm working with psychoanalysts, I'm working with neurologists, and we have lots and lots of ideas of how to open up the channels of communication between the daemon and the eidolon in such a way that we can maybe even progress humanity to the next level.
Very, very interesting. And in regards to that, have you any ideas or theories or even scientific knowledge about what it is that affects, let's say, our mood then in that sense? You can be very, very upbeat, you're happy, and all of a sudden, wham, something hits you and you're starting to think about, problems, you worry, and it's almost like it is schizophrenic in one sense because you're switching all of a sudden, to this other mode. Do you know what that comes from? What is it that is affecting us so much?
The only thing I can think of, and this is the opportunity to mention somebody I'm working with quite closely, is a guy called Carl L. Lamarx. And Carl is bipolar, severely bipolar. And bipolarity is very much those extremes we have. And I think we all have this up and down elements, of being manic or depressive.
Yeah.
But I think certain people go to extremes, and those people are part of my creativity people. They're in there with the TLEs and everything else, because the amount of writers, Virginia Woolf, people like that who are bipolar. But I feel it's a matter of how we can control this. And I just wonder whether it's to do with the balance between eidolonic consciousness and demonic consciousness. But how that works, I don't know. And I'm leaving that to other people, purely and simply because I don't feel technically capable enough. For instance, one of the other areas we're working in, and it's very much involved with my theory, is autism and Asperger's syndrome. One of my associates and that's a guy that's involved in my work is a guy called Ed. And Ed's son is profoundly autistic. He's also got Asperger's syndrome and he's got temporal lobe epilepsy. This lad can predict the future. This lad is seeing a different world to the world we're seeing. And we've been applying, and I know it sounds terrible, but we've been applying a lot of my theories about glutamate and the glutamate in this lad's diet. And he's getting better. He's coming out of his shell. It seems to be working. It's absolutely amazing. And it's again because there just seems to be these levels where the human mind, we are convinced, for instance, people that have autism, the daemon is screaming to get out, and it can't. It's trapped because the eidolon has difficulties in relating to reality. I'm in touch with the guy that was the main advisor on the movie Rain Man, and I've been in contact with him 2 or 3 times now, and he's really quite fascinated by what I'm doing as well. His name slips my mind for a second, but there are so many areas here. But what I want to do is to leave the experts to the areas like the psychiatrists. At the moment, I'm in negotiations writing a book on near-death experience with an Australian psychiatrist, consultant psychiatrist. Because, of course, near-death experience is something we haven't talked about either. There's lots of gaps even now.
Yes.
But sorry, yeah.
Oh, no, I just wanted to mention, because there is work rather being done on, balancing the brain halves. Because, again, it seems to me this has been mentioned, and even actually in what's Philip K. Dick's latest movie version of this. The name of the movie escapes me now, but I'll think of it later. But where they talk pretty much about this idea as well, that there is a war going on in your brain, in your mind, these different halves of the brain.
Would this be a scanner darkly?
That's right, a scanner darkly, obviously, yes. And what needs to be done in one sense is through, we need to balance these different sides, the polarities. And I know that there's things like hemisync, for instance, that the Monroe Institute have been working on. Have you been looking into that at all?
Yes, I've got 2 or 3 people who have been involved in the Monroe Institute, and I think there is one guy who's a member of the Monroe Institute coming along to my talk in New York. I'm particularly interested in the implications for my theory for what Monroe was doing in terms of astral travel and such like, because this then goes into the new development area, something called that Carl, my associate, calls collapsing the consciousness wave. And what we're doing with this is we're applying my theory and Carl's theory together to bring together something we're calling the big toe, which is the Bohmian-Imax grand theory of everything. Because we believe that bringing our two theories together, we've got something incredibly powerful. Because Carl argues that there is a like I was talking about the particle waves. Carl argues that there's a consciousness wave out there, and by being a self-conscious being, you collapse the consciousness wave, which would explain telepathy. It would explain all the things I can't explain in my theory. So it's big, powerful stuff, this. But the Monroe Institute, fascinated to talk to those guys, I think.
Do you think that we possibly also are on a developing evolutionary cycle here, so to speak, that we are, or a line that we actually are just in the initial steps here to begin to discover this and tap into this, meaning that as the brain continues to develop and so forth, things like telepathy and tapping into a larger reality is going to be possible? What do you think?
Oh, absolutely. We're finding this all the time at the moment. In my group, you mentioned earlier on about synchronicity. I've adapted that word. I have a term called synchronidity. And synchronidity is when a synchronistic event becomes fortuitous in one way or the other. And we try to keep records of these things. And they happen so often. I mean, if anybody's interested, I've put a couple of things on my forum in the last week or so that would stun the hell out of you. The coincidences are ingrained and pointed and deep. And this is because I don't know about this. People who know me know that they like to call me Anthony Why Me Peake, because I don't quite know why it's me as opposed to somebody else that's come up with all this. And I find it rather overpowering sometimes. As you know, I was author of the month on the Graham Hancock site in April. And I found it all overpowering that all these people were interested in my work. But it does. And sometimes I look back at my books now and say, my God, did you write that? And I did. But I don't know even where it came from myself. It's as if I've been driven. A lot of people, I mean, I'll give you an example of just how weird this is becoming.
Sorry to cut you off, but you're in touch with your daemon, right? Your daemon.
Yes, that's what people say. And my daemon has started to talk to me. My daemon has been guiding me to write this book and has been for a long time. And it's something happened with myself and my wife a couple of days ago. And my wife, you know, she's very, very down to earth. And we were walking along the road and we were walking past a drive of a house. And I heard my daemon in my voice and the voice in my head turn around and say, stop, a car's going to come through there. And I said, stop, a car's coming. We didn't even hear it. And suddenly a car shot out in front of us. We'd have been in the middle of the road when that happened. And things like that keep happening. And I keep going, this is weird. Now, I met up with Dr. Alan Roberts. Oh, yeah, there's the other thing as well. I've got videos on YouTube. If you just go onto YouTube and put in Anthony Peake, you'll find me. And those movies have been made by a guy called Dr. Alan Roberts. And Alan is a Zen teacher and a meditation teacher. And Alan was talking to me a couple of days ago about this. And he said, you've got to go with the flow. You're important and you have to go with the flow on this. Stop resisting it. Go with it. Because at the moment I'm resisting it and pushing back. Because I find, because I find, in one way I find all this recognition wonderful. But I'm not that type of personality. I'm not in it for personal gain. I'm definitely not in it for financial gain. I'm in it because it's so profoundly important to me. And I'm desperate to get this message across to as many people as possible because it's so important. I cannot believe just how important it is. Whether I'm running out of time, I don't know, but I have this burning need to get this message out quickly. But the reason I was going to tell the tale was that I had an email I also get mediums contacting me as well, which is amazing because you think that probably they would find my stuff a little bit too scientific in many ways. But I had one of Britain's top mediums who will